Okay, and we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Just depends on where you are and when you are watching or listening to this broadcast. Welcome to Lyonsview Realty Financial Fridays. My name is Clara Lyons-DeVaughn. I am the broker owner of Lyonsview Realty. Our team provides residential, commercial for small businesses and nonprofits, and property management services. I'm so excited that you decided to join us today. Lyonsview Realty launched Financial Fridays to help you stay current on those trends that impact your bottom line. And our goal is to provide you with resources, information, and tips to assist you in making the best financial decisions. And our commitment is to maximize your wealth building power now and in the future. So I'm really glad that you tuned in today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Feel free to like and share this video. And remember that our guests are here as a resource too. So feel free to ask questions. You can put any questions in the chat and reach out to our guests. So I'm really, really excited to introduce our guest for today, Mr. Gardine Wilson. Hi.
Hey, how are you? How are you?
Oh, I am excited. I am really, really excited because today's topic is just a special one. I'm going to copy your comment. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, today's topic is a special one. And I remember, well, one, I just want to say thank you for coming. We have
Thank
this ongoing relationship. We had an opportunity to meet. God, it's been what, 1 or 2 years now?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, it was April 2021.
2021. Okay, I'm horrible with dates. So,
Yes.
and,
So yeah, we're going.
Mr. Wilson has been a wealth of information related to student loan and student loan debt. And I actually had an opportunity to attend the University of Southern California. And at that time, it was like $40,000 a year to to attend school. And after 4 years of undergraduate and several years of graduate school, I had a pretty substantial student loan debt. And you guys are in for such a treat because at the time I was in school, I didn't know about the various programs of what you could do to just manage your student loan debt. And Mr. Wilson has done another broadcast with us. You can go back to the YouTube station and check that out at another time because today we're going to be talking about how you can wipe that debt forever. So I'm like so excited because student loan forgiveness is a really, really big thing right now. When we went into the pandemic, it kind of got put on hold, for a minute. There's this whole thing about student loan refinancing where you could lower your interest rate and your payment. The thing about the income driven repayment where you lower your payment. And now we're going to be talking about actual forgiveness where that whole debt gets wiped. Like this is a God thing. So if you're listening to us today, if you are listening to us today, God has put you here for a very special gift, a very special blessing, and I don't want you to miss your blessing. Don't delay on this. Don't procrastinate. Mr. Wilson is here. He's going to kind of give us the background, the history, the information on how you do it. Do not delay. Today, I'm going to put the website in the chat so you have it as well. But don't delay. You want to hop on this as soon as possible. It's not a hoax. It's not a joke. It's the real deal. And you have an opportunity, if you meet the guidelines, to wipe your student loan debt and not have to pay it back. That is huge. It is a huge, huge blessing. But I'm so excited. I'm going to let you jump in here, Mr.
Let's see. Hey, the sister says, I want to receive this blessing. Clara, thank you so much. I have actually been in this for a minute. I am looking at this and in this, since I've actually been following the whole student loan situation since 2018 and watching some of the things going from a legislative side and everything that's actually been going on because as a financial advisor, so many of my clients actually are being denied getting into homes. They're actually delaying marriage. They're actually, putting off having children. When you look at the whole debt to income ratio, some of the people that have actually gotten out and are, looking at this thing as one. And the interesting thing about similar to credit cards, you know how, and when you got cash in your pocket or in your purse, and you actually are looking at spending that cash, it hurts. It hurts when you're looking at spending the cash. However, when you're actually in the store and you're looking at the same item and you can pull out that plastic and swipe it, it's like, oh, the pain is not as bad, right? And so the crazy part about student loans is the student loans have actually been put way, way, way back in the closet. They've been in the garage and the file cabinets. It's a way, way, way in the back. And the sad part about it is most of that doesn't come forward until they run into somebody like you, Clara,
And they
and they're
want to
saying,
buy a house, and that student loan debt is sitting there, and it's jacking up their debt to income.
yes, yes. And
You
so
can't run
now
out.
that's decreasing what you have the ability to do.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, I'm going to go into a very brief history on how this whole thing came to be. So in 1958, Russia got in front of us as far as the whole space race. And I don't know if anybody's been following what's been happening recently, but they've got telescopes now, and a lot of what's going on is them actually out into the frontier and looking for water on some planet somewhere. And Russia had beat us to the space race with Sputnik back in 1958. So Eisenhower actually said, listen, wait a minute. We actually need a more educated group of Americans who actually are in a position to help us in getting in front of this entire space race. And so the government actually looked at this whole thing about student loan. I mean, student going to college. And if you can't afford it, we're going to actually jump in and help you, with getting into college, getting through college. And at that time, college was not that expensive at all. In fact, in that time period, in the mid 60s, you only had about 8% of Americans that were even in college. So at that time, college actually was really something that was, space exploration in and of itself, right? However, people that were actually coming out, of course, were actually, looking at helping out in science and all of this stuff that was actually going on, which was where education was pretty much focused around that time. And then once you actually looked at um, how all of that began to morph, of course, more colleges started popping up, and you actually had more people, especially during the civil rights movement, and especially for us. A lot of us were actually being denied jobs as foremen and as executive people in jobs. The excuse that we continued to get was you don't have the education.
I don't have that
Okay.
degree. Yeah.
Yes. And so even when all of that actually came down and the dreams that were actually being deferred on our ends, especially as it directly connected to economics, it actually pushed a lot of us to get the education. One of the things coming out of my household was when you get that education, they can't take it away. Okay. And of course, when you look at our history, again, education is something that, you want to have, and you can actually take it, and it's portable. So you can take it from one company to the next company and the whole nine.
Right.
Um, and so, yes, major component of encouragement that actually had us going into not just from our parents, but the government was also saying, this is a good thing. Come on in, get your education. And I don't know about you, Claire, was getting your education a major emphasis in your home?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, my parents. I was a second generation. My dad had a high school education, but he actually did quite well as an entrepreneur. And my mom had gone just through like community college. She didn't go any farther than that. And between my siblings, I was the only person who went to undergraduate and graduate school, college. So yeah, it was a new thing. And for a lot of people, the baby boomers who are out there, of which I'm one, college is a really a new thing. But I don't think the thing that they don't tell you about is the debt associated with going to school.
Right.
And a lot of parents, it's one of the questions I'll probably ask you later, are paying for setting up programs, so that their children can go, and they're incurring the debt on behalf of their children. I paid my own, and God bless, I'm out of my student loan debt. Unfortunately, I don't get to take advantage of all these things. I had an opportunity to pay it back, and I did, but it was a lot. It was a lot, and I remember showing up to campus that first day, and I had no clue that I was going to get a bill. And a little angel came by. I think I've shared this story with you, Gardine. Came by, and I was sitting outside on the quad crying. And it's like, what is wrong? And I said, they gave me this bill, and I don't have this. I don't have this to pay.
Mm.
And
Wow.
he said, can you get the money? And I said, yeah, but not today. He said, write a check. He said, you got a checking account? I said, yes. He said, write the check. I was like, are you kidding? He's like, no, write the check. So I wrote a check, went to student aid and did my thing. They didn't cash that check for months.
Wow. Wow.
But, I went and, I was able to get through. And then, of course, the bill that you get afterwards is crazy. So talk a little bit about what's happening with President Biden and the legislation, because I know he put things on hold for a minute. But talk
Hmm.
about the new legislation that's in place currently.
Great, great, great. Thank you for bringing that up because when you think about it, especially in our households, and I'm speaking, the majority of African American households, education was something that they knew. Okay, you're not getting a promotion. We look at economic. How do we move up the ladder? And so in that, when you look at parents who didn't necessarily have the education, and these children who, of course, late part of the baby boomer side, going into the civil rights movement, everything that was actually associated with that. When you look at how this whole student loan situation was set up, I need to be very, very clear about this.
Hmm.
Going to college is an investment.
Yes, it is.
The whole system of college is when you graduate from college, your first year salary out of college should actually exceed your entire student loan debt.
Wow, that's not the case for most people.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so, in that, when you look at it, it's a 10-year period. The whole thing with student loans is that you should be able to pay 10% on your student loans over a 10-year period, and you should actually have your student loans paid off. Student loans were only supposed to be, 10-year worst case scenario. Now, I'm actually going to give you a very, very difficult statistic to digest.
Okay.
20 years
Mhm.
after the average African American graduates from college, they still owe 20 years later 95% of the student loan debt that they actually had when they graduated.
That's a
So
lot.
going back into what you actually, were saying earlier, this is why it's so important for us. Because what is happening now is that there is a reconciliation that's going on in the Biden administration this fall. And that reconciliation is taking into account the entire history of your student loans. There's income-based repayment plans, income-driven repayment plans that are actually now being considered where there's been forbearances, where there's been deferments. Those are actually looking to be counted towards your student loan payments. Because it was in the past, only payments were counted. But now they're actually taking all of that into account. Okay. Because today, the student loan situation, 1.6 to $1.7 trillion. When you look at 69% of people that are actually going to college, they take out student loans. Average student loan debt is about $30,000. However, I've actually had some clients that have actually come in, husband and wife are 300,000 plus, attempting to go to medical or going to law school, and they picked up all of that debt and actually haven't, again, like you said, made the money coming out. And so, in putting it all in perspective, student loan debt, this debt that we keep in the back of our closet in the file cabinet with all this dust on it, is actually second only to mortgages in the household. It is larger than credit card debt. It is larger than auto loan debt. Student
Wow.
loan debts are really inadvertently hurting our community and hurting a lot of people in general, right?
Mhm.
So, of course, Cordona, who actually is over the Department of Education in the Biden administration, he had actually talked about this whole $10,000 of forgiveness, and he did that on his campaign. They're actually all over him now about, are you going to move forward? Some people are actually, some people in, his own camp are saying, listen, we want you to do 50,000. And the advocates on the back end are actually saying, listen, we want you to do this because it's going to change the entire trajectory. It's going to loosen up a lot of economic opportunities for, people who've been disadvantaged to invest in this country, to actually free up more in terms of economic power, in terms of, purchasing power with homes. That argument is gone. However, the issue is that almost 60% of the student loans that are completely paid off are for people who actually make, 200,000 plus.
Mhm.
So on the other side, you say the doctors, dentists, attorneys, your people that are computer technology people, they're saying, well, wait a minute. How are you actually trying to, forgive when we've actually paid ours off? So now you have this other contingent that's actually saying, wait a minute, how are you actually going to just give a free ride and a free ticket and put it on the American citizens to do all this forgiveness? That's why a lot of this stuff has been hemmed up and held up. So, what has actually happened, okay, that we need to know? What has
Mhm.
actually happened that is actually going to help us? In the chat, I've actually shared um, the www.studentaid.gov. Okay, I'm going to share with you some of the things that have actually happened in that space. Okay, let me see here.
We can't see your screen. So while you're looking for it, if you could speak to it, that would be great.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Okay, so in that, when you look at what has actually happened with this whole student loan scenario, this let me know if you
It's coming up. You're trying to share your screen, and
yes.
I put the website on the. There we go. All right, we can see it.
Okay, so let me see here.
Oh,
So when you
went
look at,
away.
yeah,
Whatever
that's
you.
fine, that's fine.
Okay.
So let me do this here.
It went away for a minute. So
Here we Yeah, here we go. Let
okay.
me know if you can
Yep, I
see
have
that.
it. Yes, I can.
Okay. So when you go in here, first of all, when you look at what has happened, undermanaged loans, right? People who actually had worked for nonprofit organizations,
Hmm.
they actually have a window between October of last year and October of this year. This is very, very important. It
Okay.
used to be that you had to have all 10 years that were running consecutive for a nonprofit, right?
Okay.
However, now if you actually had like 15 to 17 year period where you may have had breaks in between nonprofits, they're putting all of that together to combine for your 10 years for forgiveness. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
So I'm trying to get the relationship between the individual and the nonprofit. So if you had, I'm no, I don't understand.
Okay, so if you're an individual, great, great. So if you are an individual who has worked for a nonprofit,
Oh, you work for a nonprofit.
if
Got you.
you worked for a nonprofit
Okay.
organization, okay,
Okay.
it was so everything with student loans is like my aunt, she used to do quilts, and she
Hmm.
would take a patch of fabric here and a patch of fabric here, and she would actually make this beautiful quilt with cotton. But imagine a quilt that's actually got these patches that have holes in them, and you actually trying to cover yourself. The
Okay.
way that legislatively what's been happening with student loans over the years is somebody actually jumps up and down and is hollering about, oh, this is not good. And so they'll say, okay, we'll create a bill and we'll add this to it. And they say, oh, well, this is bad. They'll say, okay, well, we'll actually put a bill together and we'll add this to the student loan scenario. What is happening now, Claire, going back to what you were saying, is it's amazing, especially for us, primarily because the fact that they're actually now looking at the entire student loan situation. Because when you look at forgiveness of student loans, since 1995, there have only been 32 people in all of the United States who've actually had their student loans forgiven.
Mhm.
Okay. So even the people who have actually qualified to have their student loans forgiven under the last administration, um, under the Trump administration, a lot of those loans weren't even looked at. They were basically looking at very small things and sending them back. You didn't actually, put a comma between lines, and you didn't actually have a sentence that was,
They were
where
jumping
we
back. So what are they doing now, though?
right.
So
So
I'm
when you
not
look at the
understanding.
public service loan forgiveness component now, right?
Mhm.
Just look at it like this. So if you worked for a nonprofit for 3 years,
Okay.
and then you went into a corporate sector for another 2 years, and
Okay.
then you went back to that nonprofit for another 4 to 5 years, and
Okay.
then you went to the corporate sector, and then you went and actually did. So the combined amount that you've actually done in nonprofit adds up to 10 years.
Okay.
They're saying, okay, send this form in, and what we're going to do is look at combining all of your years to
Hmm.
combine to 10 for forgiveness.
Okay.
Does that
So,
make
so,
good?
so the guideline basically is you have to have worked for 10 years in order to qualify for forgiveness. And in the past, if I understand you correctly, if you worked for a nonprofit, they weren't counting that time, and now they are.
Yeah, if in the past it used to be you had to do a combined 10 years straight.
Okay.
And every year you had to go through a recertification where your HR department had to say she still works here or he still works here. And then they'd send that in and then you get counted credit for that year,
Got it.
right? So the magic number for public student loan forgiveness is actually 120 months or 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you have to have worked or been employed for 120 months or 10 years.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
And
Okay.
so instead of it being, just straight now, where you had to do a consecutive 10 years at a
Consistent, consecutively, I guess is the word. Yeah.
what yes, in
Mhm.
fact, what it used to be. Now there is an exception that says if over a 20-year period, you can actually get us the name of the company you work for, and some contact in HR. If we can verify that you were there and it actually collectively makes 10 years, you're actually going to qualify for forgiveness.
Okay. Great. Okay.
Okay, you see what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yes.
So
Great.
yeah, so some of the people that actually did nonprofit work were actually saying, "Oh gosh, I couldn't, stand it there." Or
They got kicked out because they were doing public service. So now that public service is going to be counted.
yes, it's all
Got
that public service and nonprofit organizations and whatnot. And again, when you look at people that have worked for nonprofit hospitals, government organizations, stuff like that, And so the next one is the teacher loan forgiveness, which
Okay.
actually, especially if you have teachers that have worked in schools that were, free lunch program schools, those teachers actually are in position to actually have student loans forgiven. Now, some of these have been added, right? Closed school discharge. So if you went to a college and your college has closed, you are actually in a position to actually say, listen, I went to this school, I can't, get the records, I need to apply to actually have my student loan discharge.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, and then when you look at the Perkins loan cancellation, which actually is connected to if you have Perkins loans, those are being discharged. This one is
You're saying
huge.
Perkin, P-E-R, what are you saying? Perkin,
Yeah,
P-E-R-K?
so there was actually a period where there were loans that were Perkins loans.
Mhm.
Okay, and if a person, when you go under studentaid.gov,
Mhm.
okay, this website. When you go in, everyone who has student loans should actually have an account here.
Okay.
Okay. If you don't, you have to create an account. Department of Education will actually have a record here of all of your student loans and all of the student loan servicers that have actually had your loans.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so if you find that you had a Perkins loan as part of your student loans, there's
Uh-huh.
a cancellation discharge component associated with that particular
Okay.
type of loan.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
So
go ahead.
I'm just going to summarize because I want to move us forward. So 10 years consecutively now, doesn't matter if you work nonprofit or in public or private sector, that 10 years is going to count. You just have to prove the 120 months, 10 years. If you're a teacher,
Okay.
um, you're part of the forgiveness program. And then if you had a Perkin loan, they're going to forgive that debt as well.
Right. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if you went to a school that closed,
Okay.
if you went to a college that is
And
no longer,
that's no longer in existence.
exactly,
Gotcha. Okay.
and you're still paying on that student loan, there's an option to actually get that loan discharged.
Gotcha. Okay. So
Okay.
if the college is no longer there, then they'll wipe that debt.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Okay. So,
Awesome.
so when we initially talked about this in April, a number of these opportunities to discharge a loan have actually come forward.
Okay.
That's why I'm so excited to share this information. It's really sad that this is not, top of the news, on the nightly news, or that you actually see this on, CNBC is top of the news. This is what you need to do, primarily because every individual who has a student loan needs to now dig that out the closet and actually diligently attack getting your student loan wiped out. I cannot emphasize that enough.
I
We
have
only
a
have go ahead.
I have a question here. So
Yes.
the question is that their student loans. This is Andrea. She's saying her student loans will be forgiven in 12 months because they've combined all of the payments. So what happens to the balance, and does she have to pay taxes on that?
Great question. Great question. So in 12 months, she's saying that she is actually going to have her student loans forgiven.
Hmm.
Okay. And is that because she's in an income debt repayment plan?
Um, Andrea, if you could type if you're in an income debt repayment plan, that would be great. She said it's because they've combined all of her payments, but she's asking what happens to the balance.
Okay. So great. Okay. So the balance, right? In the Corona uh, relief plan that actually happened, at the last minute, they were able to put a provision in for this was actually when Biden came in. This was the third. Remember people that got the third stimulus check? So that third stimulus check, they were able to put in a provision that said if your student loan is forgiven, you don't have to pay any taxes on that. In the past, whatever you actually had forgiven or discharged, it's like if you make an agreement with a debt that you had on a car, and they say, well, we're gonna just accept pay off, and what they do is send you a 1099-C that said you had to count the amount that was forgiven as income. In this particular case, to answer Andrea's question, no, that is actually forgiven. It's a tax-free scenario, so you don't have to worry about that coming up. Hallelujah.
That is huge. That made me want to say, woohoo! So what you're saying is, if your student loan debt is forgiven, you don't have to pay taxes on that
You
money.
do not have to count that as income, nor do you have to pay taxes on it.
Okay, is that in writing somewhere?
Yes, well, it's actually in the bill. The bill that actually was put, that last bill, the Corona relief bill that Biden then put in right after he got in office. Because remember, there were two that were under Trump, and then the one when Biden got in, shortly after January, they actually had another relief bill that actually came into effect in 2021. Well, in that particular bill that became, law for the distribution, because they had to vote on it in order for the money to be printed for the stimulus.
Right.
Inside of that bill is a provision that actually says if a student loan debt is discharged or forgiven, no taxes are actually owed on that. It's
Awesome.
inside of it's legal, it's law.
Awesome. So, what other guidelines are there for people to qualify for student loan forgiveness?
Perfect. Okay, so some of this has been happening up under the radar. And the next one that I want to talk about is people who have a disability.
Okay.
Okay. So if you have a total or permanent disability, you're
Mhm.
eligible to get your entire student loan discharged.
Okay.
Okay. And I want to say there was 400 and some odd thousand people that
Mhm.
actually applied for this, and they wiped out those loans for people that were actually on total disability, that were struggling with student loans. Okay.
Mhm.
The next one is that if you actually are a parent
Mhm.
and the child died, there is a discharge due to death.
Okay.
Okay, so if the son died, and the loan was actually for the son's education or the daughter, there is a discharge that's actually connected due to death. Or,
Okay.
for example, if the mother actually took out the loan on behalf of the child and she was responsible for that student loan debt, that actually is being discharged.
Okay.
Okay,
Got it.
okay. The
So if
other
you have
one,
a disability,
mhm.
permanent or partial, and you can prove that, they'll discharge your debt. If
Well,
you're
yes, if you have this total or permanent disability. So basically,
total or permanent, excuse me,
right.
thank you. Like
Yeah. And so
clarification.
in that, an individual who is, of course, getting Social Security disability, right?
Mhm.
In that, if you've actually been deemed to be, permanently disabled,
Mhm.
then you're eligible for discharge of your
Of
student
debt.
debt.
Awesome. And if you're
Okay.
a parent and your child um, passes away,
Hmm.
then you can discharge the debt that's associated with your student loan.
Right. And vice versa. If the parent took out, because right now, Clara, over 25% of all student loans that are making up this 1.7 trillion dollar amount, there's $96 billion of student loans that actually are taken out by parents for their children to go to college.
Yeah. So if the parent dies, because a lot of people lost parents during COVID, and they
Hmm.
were paying that student loan debt. So for the child, is that debt white?
That is correct. You're
Okay.
looking at
This,
that being
I'm saying white, but discharge, I guess,
discharged. That is correct.
is the proper term. Okay. Wow.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
no. Mhm.
One of the things when we were when we were doing the seminar with Dr. Soares, Dr. Soares actually was he said it very eloquently, and he was like, your student loan will actually follow you through college, through marriage, through having children, through death, and your student loan will sit on the pew at your funeral.
Mm.
Okay. So one of the provisions was that student loans could not be discharged even if you filed bankruptcy. Okay.
That was in the past.
Yes. Now, if
Mm.
you're filing bankruptcy and you have a student loan, including that student loan and showing that even attempting to pay that student loan is going to cause an adverse financial hardship, then that paperwork needs to be submitted when an individual is filing bankruptcy for it to be considered in a discharge.
Mm. Now that's
Okay.
huge. That
Eh,
is, don't sleep on that one, y'all. That is huge because in the past, you couldn't put your student loan debt in your bankruptcy.
Absolutely. You could
Oh
not.
my God.
Yes,
Okay.
you could not. And now, people that are, well, most people get an attorney. If you have an attorney that's actually filing a bankruptcy for you, make sure that they include the student loans, because in the past, old school people would not even consider, I mean, attorneys wouldn't even consider, a lot of them don't even know about this particular component that's associated with being able to include your student loans in bankruptcy now. All right.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. So I hope you guys are taking notes because this is a lot.
Hey, listen, there are so many ripe fruits that are on this tree. And again, Clara, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk about this because, the thing that even since, and just think about this, this has been since April. Every week, there's been someone calling, trying to find out because the information on how do we individually navigate?
Mhm.
How do we individually navigate?
Right.
It's been the biggest dilemma because it's so confusing, in terms of, who is my loan with? I went to a couple of different schools. I have graduate loans. I have undergrad loans. I don't
Right.
know which direction to go. Now there is, a more concrete direction on what every individual needs to do. This is no one size fits all
Mhm.
because everybody has had their own experience with student loans and student loan debt. Now it's our time to pull this stuff out the closet and actually really begin, addressing the situation. I want to go through a couple more
Okay.
before jumping back on.
Okay.
There is a borrow defense to repayment. So there was a huge lawsuit that actually was put in play by individuals who had been given these student loans and really didn't know what was actually going on. And so, there's an opportunity to be a part of that class action lawsuit. That's what that is. That really gets into the weeds. False certification is the next one that I want to talk about. The false certification discharge is actually where these schools, and they just recently actually did this with Corinthian College. Corinthian College actually had 105 colleges, and they had promised these people going to the schools, if you come to our school, not only will we guarantee you a job, but we'll guarantee you a job making X amount of money.
Okay.
Okay. In addition to that, some of the schools had actually said that we are A certified, A accredited with the Department of Education. That was false, right? So
Okay.
those schools where individuals have those loans at your ITTs, some of your for-profit schools have
Mhm.
the opportunity to actually go in and actually file a false certification discharge because they're able to show, look, I was promised going into this field that I would get so much. And keep in mind, student loans is actually an investment.
Right.
So when you came out, you should actually have only had, you should have been making more
Right.
and been able to pay that off over a 10-year period, right?
Mhm.
And then the unpaid refund discharge is the other one that is actually out there as well. And so where that is connected to if it was that you actually had um, overpaid or you actually had a student loan that got mixed up with what was going on with these servicers, then you have the ability to actually have your loan forgiven in that way too. Okay.
Gotcha.
So having said that, when we look at, because I want to
Yeah,
make sure, yeah,
we're rolling on time, but that's okay. That's okay.
okay. So
Um,
I
a quick
wanted to make sure
quick
that,
question before
yes,
you move on.
go ahead.
If people want to see if they're part of the class action suit, is there a website that they can go to find out if they qualify under the class action suit?
Yes, a lot of the detail with that information is actually, again, under the student aid, because under every single one of those tabs, when you go into studentaid.gov and you click on manage loans,
Hmm.
and going under every single one of those hyperlinks gives you more detail into what has been going on. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, let me actually get to the crust of the crust of the crust. If that
Okay.
was not enough good news, what is actually happening now? Again, if you have been in undergrad, the magic number was 240. Okay. Now,
It's
in that,
240. Is that dollars, years?
no,
What? 240 what?
good question. Great question. Great question. 240 months of
Okay.
payments.
Okay.
Okay, so when you look at the public loan forgiveness,
Hmm.
10 years. Government is saying you're helping out, our community, our country be great. So in 10 years, that's your number, 120. If you and military actually has the same scenario. You've been in the military, 10 years, you had student loans, you forgive it. Now, for the rest of the people, and especially as I gave the statistic earlier, when you're actually looking at 20 years after we graduated, we still owe. Because when you look at, if you came out of school in the 80s, you typically had a 9 to 10% interest on your student loans.
Hmm.
The rule of 72 says what? If you actually have interest every of 7.2, in 10 years, that is going to double,
Right.
right? So can you imagine a person going to school in the 80s? That loan has actually quadrupled.
Quadrupled in cost. Yeah.
Yes, in terms of the interest associated with that, right?
Okay.
One of the companies, Navient, has actually, being sued. They were trying to get out, but they actually uh, had contests where people who were calling in to get their student loan information,
Hmm.
that service and company had contests to see how quickly we can get these people off the phone.
Mm.
So when you're calling in to say, can you please tell me, I'm trying to, find out about, they were running contests like, okay, hey, you were able to get them off the phone in 5 seconds. You were able to get them out, you're the winner. Now, what kind of egregious behavior is that when you have a student loan servicer who actually should be telling you what is actually going on with your student loans? We've
Right.
actually had all of this conversation about what's happening now, and we haven't even touched on, you know, a person and what they need to do. I'm gonna come to that.
Okay.
So, with what's happening now, is just think about it like this: you've been out of school over 20 years. You had an undergrad loan.
Hmm.
They're now going back and they're saying, we're actually looking to count, and that's why they're saying we're going to do it this fall because the process is that your loans have to be under the Department of Education. Okay. Now, some people, and what actually is also very, very important for us to understand is that in the 80s going into the 90s, the Department of Education actually opened up student loans to actually be controlled by the banks. The banks were actually able to get in and make money off the interest on student loans. Okay.
Hmm.
And so even though it was a government student loan, the bank actually was the one that actually got in and said, okay, we got the interest. Now, in
Hmm.
2010, Obama came in and he said, I'm trying to actually address the student loan issue. If we pull the student loans back under the Department of Education, we could save $68 billion.
Hmm.
Okay. So what happened is that when they pulled the loans back under the Department of Education, two things happened that were really, really rough.
Okay.
The first thing was that colleges said, now that the government is on the hook, we can charge more. And so you started to see this uptick with how much colleges were charging.
Right.
Okay. And so undergrad, you're typically getting $5,000 to $6,000 in a Pell Grant. And I mean, in terms of your Pell Grant is conditional upon your income. But
Right.
the other thing is that the maximum that you could actually get was between $5,000 and $6,000 in a student loan, okay, from the Department of Education, right?
Okay.
So what happened is that a lot of private loans were taken out and colleges were charging more, but the Department of Education became the largest commercial loan lender in the country.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm saying is basically that people actually have to first of all understand, where are my student loans?
Okay. And they can go to the website to find out where they are.
Yes.
Okay.
And if they've been out for a while, they need to actually set up an account under studentaid.gov. And under that social security number, they actually will be able to take a look at these student loans.
Okay.
The second thing that's very key and critical is that if you find that your loans are with some private company or with some bank somewhere, you
Hmm.
have the ability to do a debt consolidation under the Department of Education and get your loans consolidated.
Okay.
That's the only way that you're actually going to be considered for this major level of forgiveness and cancellation.
Okay.
Okay. So in this fall, when they actually begin counting, you want your number to actually add up to how much? How many months?
240.
Bam, there you go.
Okay.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
All
And
right.
so and so in that, and we're speaking strictly undergrad. So
Mhm.
they actually calculate all of your numbers and say they come up with your numbers similar to the situation with Andrea.
Mhm.
Okay, I've got 225 credits now under the Department of Education,
Mhm.
and you have to be in an income driven repayment plan.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now that's
Okay.
another slice of the pie, which basically says that, I'm making so much, I'm recertifying every year,
Mhm.
and my payments are going to be, 9 times out of 10 less than what
Mhm.
I would have to pay if I had to pay it straight away. Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's actually finding out what you got,
Right.
making sure that all of your loans you actually have a handle on, whether it's
Right.
private and or under the Department of Education. If you
Okay.
have private loans that are out there and or loans that are actually with some bank somewhere, get
Mhm.
those loans consolidated under the Department of Education,
Mhm.
right? So that you can actually be considered for forgiveness. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. The other thing is that once that actually happens, and again, going back to the scenario we talked about earlier, so if it is that you actually have 225 as far as a number towards your forgiveness, then you already are very clear on how many more payments. I've got to make another 15 payments, and my loan should actually be forgiven, right?
Mhm.
And so that's what we're looking at.
So, so you're answering some of the questions that are in the chat, but let me just make sure I'm clear on this.
Okay.
So one of the questions was, I'll put it up. Why aren't private student loans combined with the federal loans? And you're saying that they can be combined, or is that a different question?
Okay, so let's see. Why aren't private student loans through Navient combined okay, great. Primarily because think about it. Everybody's journey in school was different. Okay. So look at the calculation. If it is that you are actually able to get the maximum student loan under the Department of Education. So say college was,
I'm sorry. Is the Department of Education considered federal? That's one of
yes,
okay. All right.
Department of Education is considered federal. So say tuition was $20,000, and I'm just using this as a scenario. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
$20,000, they gave you 10,000 in a Pell Grant.
Mm-hmm.
You got 5,000 in a student loan. So
Mm-hmm.
you got the max for a federal student loan.
Gotcha.
and then you actually knew you had a $5,000 gap. So what do? You end up taking out
Private loan.
a $5,000 private loan
Right.
in order to pay for your tuition.
Mhm.
Everybody's journey is different. But
Right.
if you have private loans are also being rolled into an entire debt consolidation.
Mhm.
Okay. And this is as per Navient, who is actually one of the loan servicers, who tends to actually have a really good handle on this entire process. So at the point that you are actually looking to do a debt consolidation with all of
Mhm.
your student loans, my recommendation is to actually tell them that you want to do a debt consolidation under Nelnet.
Under what?
Nelnet is a loan servicing company.
Oh, Nelnet. Okay.
Right.
Because that's one
Okay.
of the other questions that they were told by Navient. I'll put that question up. They were told by Navient that if they consolidate um, the monies, I guess the private with the federal, that the forgiveness would start all over again. So they shouldn't consolidate. So you're saying that that the way to get around that is to go through Net. How do you spell?
Well, Nelnet is one of the servicing companies. Now, keep in mind, one of the things that makes this extremely confusing, and I've
Mhm.
been on the line with some of the customer service representatives who are answering these phones. Okay. If the loan servicing was horrible over all of these years and these same people are employed,
Mhm.
okay, you're still not getting the most accurate information. Okay. Now, studentaid.gov, the website.
Studentaid.gov. Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
One of the things that people need to do is that they need to look at the announcement of April 19th, 2022. Okay. Because that announcement outlines what's going to happen. Okay. And when we're talking about what's going to happen, it speaks about public student loan forgiveness. It also speaks about what's happening with income driven repayment plans and the fact that the loans are actually going to be considered for those credits this fall. Okay. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. And so when you look at why is that so important? Because all of this is being cleaned up behind the scenes. Everything that I've actually shared with you today is saying these are some of the avenues that you can take advantage of to get your loan forgiven. And if you just happen to actually not be eligible for any of those plans, you're actually going to have, under the debt consolidation plan, your loans actually considered because, again, they're counting deferments, they're counting forbearance, they're counting payments. And as far as it actually starting all over again, your loan history is your loan history.
Gotcha.
So
So
this
that
is
history has to be 240 months
in an undergrad. If
in
it's a
undergrad. If
right
it's
and
graduate, then what is that?
graduate, the magic number is 300.
300. Okay.
Okay, primarily because they actually gave more in student loans for graduate studies.
Mhm.
Okay, and so that magic number is actually 300 if you have grad loans,
Okay.
right?
Does
Hmm.
that 300 months include the 240 of undergraduate work?
Yes. Well, okay, so when you have a student loan that's in an undergrad,
Mhm.
that is considered like a direct subsidized.
Okay.
Okay, something that's actually on the grad level is actually considered a direct unsubsidized loan, but still under the Department of Education.
Okay.
Okay. If anything that I want everyone to get from this today
Okay.
is that you have to go in, take a look at what you have. There is a reconciliation process that I encourage all my clients to do. That is call your college or the colleges that you went to, ask for an itemized statement of your billing from the business department since you attended that school.
Mhm.
On there, you're going to see where they say you actually had your student loan, student aid payment, Department of Education or wherever that came from is actually been applied to your student loans, right? I've got clients that have actually seen anywhere between a $4,200 to $20,000 discrepancy on what happened when they were in college
Mhm.
versus them trying to reconcile this is what my student loan thing is actually saying. Because keep
Mhm.
in mind, if it is that the loan servicers were, just getting free money from the government because they were servicing the loans and the Department of Education didn't necessarily have the manpower to do that, then there could be, human error associated with what you have in student loan debt.
Right.
So right now, it's a 20, 30-year reconciliation that we're actually going through to make sure that everything that you actually did when you was in college, which was the original debt, is actually directly in conjunction with what you actually have and what you've been paying.
Okay.
And that's why one of the things is that the unpaid refund
Mhm.
piece, the discharge, when you
Mhm.
find that type of discrepancy, then you can say, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. This was duplicated. Okay. Now those pieces are actually being considered for discharge. So we've got work to do. Clara, we've got work to do. And when I tell you, getting in front of this maze for me right now is one of the greatest things that we have the opportunity to do since the civil rights movement. And I kid you not, on an economic level, I'm actually blowing this thing up primarily because I know what that forgiveness is actually going to do in terms of relieving stress, right?
Yeah.
So
There are a couple other questions before we kind of wrap. Is there
yes,
a financial guideline? So is there something that says if you make over X dollars, you can't participate, that it excludes you from participating in the process?
you're saying in terms of the income driven repayment?
No. Let's say you're in an income driven repayment now. Is there a financial, like if you make $500,000, you can't participate either in the you know, the income program, or you can't participate in the debt elimination.
Great question.
Mhm.
So, income driven repayment plan, right? Just think about it like this: the income driven repayment plan is an actual calculation, it's a standard calculation that says if you go under income driven repayment plan, there are like four different types of income driven repayment. 10 years, which is standard. You have a graduated plan, which basically is over 20 years, saying that every 2 years you have to recertify. The income based is actually saying every year you certify. That's over a 20-year period for undergrad. So, under income driven repayment, there are four different types of income driven repayment plans that you can
Mhm.
choose from, right?
Mhm.
And once you do the calculation, that in and of itself also shows you this is how much will actually be forgiven, in that space, right?
Mhm.
Or again, you have the public uh, student loan forgiveness piece, which is actually connected to the nonprofit. So everyone's situation is going to be different. Now, you
Mhm.
know, to say if I make so much, am I, able to get around this? You know, um, Keep in mind, almost 60% of all student loans that are completely paid off are people who are making high money or high
Mhm.
earners, right? So it's really a part of your responsibility to pay it off. However, just think about the number of people who
All
went
right.
3 years and they ended up dropping out. So one, you don't have a degree that you
Mhm.
can show a company, and the second thing, you still strapped with all the student loan debt.
Mhm.
And a lot of, if you think about, again, the statistic earlier, if 20 years after we have been out of college as African Americans, we still owe 95% of the debt,
Mhm.
all of what I actually shared, all of what's actually going on in, get your loans under the Department of Education, get those into an income based repayment plan, make sure that you're in a position to be considered for all of what they're going to do in this one time reconciliation because they are very clear that we have taken advantage of people who didn't know. Not only have we done that, but we've also put ourselves in a position where we have not serviced these people, in terms of the people we hired to actually give them the right information. So 20, 30, 40 years after a lot of us have graduated from college, we're still strapped with this muzzle, this level of suffocation, this thing that we don't even want to look at on our credit report that is student loan debt,
Mm.
right? So now they're trying to right the ship. And I honestly believe the reason why they're looking to do that this fall is because as all the pressure is actually on Biden to say this 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, they have been doing incredible work behind the scenes with the lawsuits, with everything that's actually been going on. This guy, Cordona, in the Department of Education, they have been really, really knocking this thing out the blocks. You see what I'm saying? And so at the end of the day, it's not on social media. It ain't in the news,
No.
and so people have to listen to programs like yours in order to find out what's going on. And we've got to share this information.
Yeah. So I'd seen something in Forbes that said that Biden canceled like 1.5 billion of student loan debt for borrowers, and that you can still apply. And I think you make a valid point that people are not getting the information. So one, it's confusing, and it's overwhelming because there's so many different layers to it, and it's on a case by case basis depending on what it is you have. But I'm just going to try to summarize a couple of things for
Hmm.
people to kind of take away. One, they can always reach out to you, and your information is there so that they can do a one-on-one with you about their particular situation. Two, they can go to studentaid.gov um, to get started in the process. And the time is now to get started because you can't wait until the fall, because in the fall it'll be done. They will have kind of, you know, put everything together. But
Yes.
who's eligible are people who have outstanding, if I understand you correctly, have outstanding student loan debt, um, whether they took it out on behalf of their children or on behalf of themselves. And that debt has been sitting out there for 240 months if they're undergrad and 300 months if they're in graduate school. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
Now,
And then there are all these subcategories. So if you're disabled, if you had death associated with it, or death of yourself, a parent, or death of the college,
yes.
the college,
The death of the college.
death of the college, the
That is
college went
correct.
away.
Yes.
Those are automatic wipes, right?
Yes.
Those are
Hmm.
automatic wipes. If you're in that lawsuit, and you can go to studentaid.gov to see if you're part of that class action suit, that's an automatic wipe. And there was another category, the four.
Yes. So you have, of course, your public service, loan
Yeah, oh,
forgiveness with the teachers or nonprofits, right? You
right, with the
also,
teachers. Yeah,
yeah, and then also the colleges that uh, basically were false advertising,
the
saying, "Come
false
here."
advertising people.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people who said we're going to give you X, Y, Z, Q if you come to our college, and they didn't fulfill in those processes. Those are automatic wipes. It's a lot
Yes.
of information. So the other thing I heard you say is that you need to get into the income consolidated debt repayment program if you're not already in it. So that might be part of the steps that you have to do before the consolidation, before you have to get to the elimination portion. So if you're not already participating in that, you want to get that going.
Eh,
Um,
eh,
Go
Yes, and
ahead.
I want to go back to Andrea's question.
Uh huh.
If she goes in and she looks at the announcement
Hmm.
on April the
April the
19th.
19th. Uh huh.
See, the thing is that we've actually got to make sure that we have the tools
Okay.
when we're talking to these loan servicing people.
Hmm.
Okay. For her to actually say it starts all over again, when you look in what does the income driven repayment or the public service loan forgiveness, what are they actually doing? It speaks about a one-time reconciliation that's happening this fall. But you have to have either your loans under the Department of Education, making sure all of your loans, whether they're direct subsidized or direct unsubsidized, they have to be under the Department of Education. And so for us, a lot of scripting and scraping trying to get through school, we first of all have to harness our loans. Where are our loans, right? I had a meeting with a client a couple of days ago. She had 32 different student loans in
Mm,
all of the years that she went to school. So now we have to reconcile and we have to compare that against the 3 colleges that she went to,
right,
right? Because, we're uncovering the truth that has actually been hidden under our financial wellness for all these years, right? Because we didn't really know, didn't have strategies in how to deal with this stuff. But the
right.
Department of Education and,
So,
Cordona, and they're trying to help. They're
right.
trying to
So
get
you're
this
saying
thing cleaned up.
put it all together under the Department of Education if you've got
Yes,
all these places. Got it.
yes,
Mhm.
yes. So
Right.
yes, so just think about it. I mean, and I know we got to wrap up, but just think about it. There are millions of people who've actually passed that threshold that actually still are carrying that debt. And I honestly believe that they're trying to actually hit all of these spots before they announce this, this one-time reconciliation, and how that could. And I know that the reason why, because think about it, September, the moratorium's over. September, they have the right to say everybody got to start back paying their student loans, right? We're
Mhm.
July 2022. So if you can get in front of it now, get in front of it, right?
Mhm.
Start doing your homework. So you can say, look, I got mine. I know this is what it is. And I ain't got to actually depend on somebody talking about what it's supposed to be. The other thing I think is that this fall, what do we have happening? We got midterms. Okay. So if they're actually pushing to get all of this stuff in a position to help us, and then we don't turn out for the election and the power changes, all of the stuff can actually change overnight as well.
Yeah.
So while we have an opportunity to take advantage of this as a people, let's do our homework.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
roll up our sleeves, get in that closet, get that dust off them files, and find out what's going on. So don't let a student loan servicer tell you something that's different from what you see in writing under the Department of Education website.
Mm.
Equip yourself and arm yourself with the truth, because
Right.
this is a moving target, and it has been. All of the stuff that I talked to you about wasn't even in existence when I did this in April of 2021. All of these have been moves that they made quietly to actually help relieve the debt, because they can't just go and say we're going to forgive all the debt, because a lot of doctors, attorneys, these people saying, look, I paid mine, but you were making the money to pay it.
Right.
A lot of people that have kind of, fell through the cracks. And then the other thing, which is really important, is look at what's happening in the divide now between the have and have nots. The wealth gap is really shot out the ceiling. And inflation is also, can you imagine if people are already having a hard time making it? What is going to happen when you actually are now put back under the gun to pay these student loans? Are you
Yeah.
going to go back into default? 30 some odd percent, 30 some odd percent of people are in default with student loans, and
Yeah.
they're trying to clean it up. We got to do the homework. We got to get at it. And we
Yeah.
got to
And
share this information.
that piece that you said about now you can get an attorney and put that debt also in your bankruptcy. Um, that's huge too, because you before you couldn't do that. So
Yes.
there is I guess what I'm taking away from this one, there's a very, very short window. We are in July.
Yes, we are.
You have a month basically to get it together. So you want to go to studentaid.gov. You want to consolidate. You want to get into the income based um,
Repayment plan.
payback. You want to consolidate your private, your federal, all under the Department of Education. You want to get a counselor to help you work through the process. You can also reach out to Mr. Wilson if you're still unclear about how to move forward in the process. And you want to be in a position so that that debt can be discharged. You won't be paying taxes on that debt discharge, which is huge. And this is a one-time opportunity, and it takes a minute, right?
Yes.
If you have a lot of student loans or you've gone to different places, it might take you a minute to pull all this information together. So you got about 30 days to get it together and get your blessing. You got to do some work though. Like
Yes.
you have about 30 days to get your blessing on this and to get your questions answered. So I'm not seeing any more. I can't see my questions on the other side. Any more questions in the chat, but you can definitely reach out to Mr. Wilson to assist you and move forward. Go to www.studentaid.gov. This is not a hoax. They are wiping student loan debt. They are discharging it, meaning you do not have to pay it back. It is gone forever. Goodbye. Whatever. So Andrea is saying, thank you. This was informative. She's going to contact MailNet today. There is another question. Does this work for plus loans?
Yes. So the Parent Plus loans, there is an option under the direct debt consolidation as well. So again, now if you're doing a direct debt consolidation, you have the ability to choose which loan servicer you want that to be under. NailNet has a direct debt loan consolidation department. Okay. So if that is something that you actually are considering or are looking to do, then that direct consolidation can be done under NailNet. And in my piece, they're one of the few companies that actually has that specific department that is well educated on the direct debt consolidation, as well as their agents pretty savvy on the process. Now, keep in mind, all of this is still a moving target. So, as the Department of Education is continuing to try and reconcile and clean this up, they're putting information forward. And, if you actually, even Google student loan forgiveness cancellation, you're going to see where, of course, the part with, the anybody that attended 105 of those Corinthian schools, all of their loan is forgiven. I think that was, well over $6 billion that was forgiven just in that fall sweep. You look at over 400,000 people that had disabilities, that their loans were forgiven, people that were under the Student Borrowers, Defense Act, all of that. The question is, we cannot be sitting back waiting on a check. We get up and get this stuff done on our own. We got some stuff to do. It's just like, it's interesting because I reflect upon in Exodus when Moses was actually at the Red Sea and the Egyptians were coming. Okay. Moses was saying, all of what you actually see, it ain't gonna happen. And all the time he's got in my mind, he was looking up to God like, you need to do something. And God actually said, take your rod and put that rod out over that
That
Red
one.
Sea and
Right.
get to walking. Okay. Yeah,
Mhm.
we've got to do something. We've actually got to do something. We've actually been on our knees praying about this thing. And right now, our work needs to take place in order for us to actually help ourselves get to financial freedom.
Yes, yes. I am. You know what? I was really blown away. I was talking to a client, and I mentioned we were going to be having this conversation today, and they were saying how this was their blessing. Like this was right on time. They've been struggling with student loan debt for a minute. They've been struggling with student loan debt for a minute, and the fact that there's an opportunity right now.
Yes.
If you do the work, let's say faith without works is dead.
There you go. That's right.
You got to do so. Go to student.gov. You may be in one of the special categories. Those are easy discharge, easy wipes, or you may need to do some more work to get there. But you've got about 30 days to get it done. To go to studentaid.gov, reach out to Mr. Wilson, and take advantage of this blessing because this is a one-time shot.
Yes.
It's a one-time shot, and um, yeah, it's a one-time shot. So that's all I'll say. Do what you need to do. If you're confused about something, you know, there are people who will help you, who will walk you through this process. So don't be discouraged. Sometimes I can get overwhelmed, especially it's a lot of information. And Mr.
Yes.
Wilson delves deep. I'll be
Yes.
like, wait,
Yes.
come back to just the yes,
You're right.
no, do this.
Yes. 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 It is no easy walk, but it's a walk that we can make.
Yes, it is
All
definitely a walk that we can make. So
all
I
right.
just want to thank those of you who tuned in today. God says, what do you want me to do? Extend the staff. Amen. Got to do my part. Most definitely, Miss Ronnie. Everybody has to do their part. So do the work. Really happy that you can. Oh, can you talk a little bit about the sessions that you're going to be doing?
Yes. Yes.
Or,
Thank you. So one of the things that I'll be doing is I'll actually get you this information, but on um, August the 2nd and August the 4th, August the 2nd is at noon. I'll be doing the entire review of, this whole thing and what we can do. This was a great conversation because it's like we can actually talk to our people about this thing. It'll be a little bit broader in terms of what's actually going on with this moving target, and I'll be doing this at least every 2 weeks because on August the 2nd is at noon. And for those people that are working and can't get away from lunch, I'm doing another one on August the 4th at 7 o'clock. Okay. 7 p.m. Right. For those people that, can get off work and, get some collard greens, macaroni and cheese, and some baked chicken, and then sit down and actually find out what's going on. So for me, of course, Claire, you already know this is one of the hot buttons for me because I'm actually seeing how people are actually in position to get this debt forgiven, canceled, and how much of a relief it has actually been, to actually be in a position to attack it and address it. And I'll be looking to possibly do seminars every 2 weeks up and until the point that they actually announce this is the date that we're actually starting the reconciliation and, at the same time following what Biden does do in terms of does he move forward with this $10,000 commitment, but at the same time I really really believe that uh, the Department of Education is actually trying to clean up as much as possible before, because when people say, well, what about mine, you have the ability to take advantage of some of the programs that are already in existence.
awesome,
Okay.
awesome,
So,
awesome. This
so August the 2nd at noon, and then August the 4th at 7 p.m.
yes, and you're also coming to you're also coming to speak to the real estate group and the community on the 22nd. We're going to be doing another session
Yes.
in the evening. That'll be on Zoom. So I'll be posting information on the Lyonsview Realty Facebook page and also out on Instagram. We need to get this message out, So if you're eligible, if you fall into the category of student loan debt, which many of us do, and you've been paying it for a minute, and you just can't seem to get up from under it, this is your opportunity. It really
Yeah.
is your opportunity to have that debt discharged, to have it wiped, to not have to pay taxes on that money. And there's some automatic wipes, and then there's some wipes that you're going to have to do a little bit more work, but it's worth it in the
Yes.
end. Get your blessing, get your
Yes.
blessing, get your blessing. So I want to thank Mr. Wilson. If you have any additional questions, definitely reach out to him. Um, Financial Fridays, we're here to provide you with resources, information, and tips that help your bottom line. And this is this is definitely going to help your bottom line. So I hope that you all receive something of value today. My name is Clara Lyons-DeVaughn, and Financial Fridays we stream live on Fridays at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. So you're welcome to come back and join us again next Friday. And until then, keep living your best life. Thank you.
Thank you.